All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so what RCRA, the kind of waste that it regulates or it is responsible for, we call it solid waste. Okay, so solid waste is, like a lot of things in environmental law, pretty broadly defined. Okay, you have garbage, refuse, garbage and refuse. I don't know the difference between garbage and refuse, but if there is a difference, both of them are covered. Sludge, from any kind of treatment facility. So if you're, like in water or waste treatment or air pollution control, whatever that, muck that is left over. Then they have generally other discarded material. And it includes solid, liquid, semi-solid, and then they say, or contained gaseous material. So if you have, I don't know, I'm thinking propane in a tank, although propane wouldn't be a waste because they'd use it. But any contained gaseous material that comes from anything, industrial, commercial, mining, agricultural, and community activities. So it's pretty much, solid waste is very, very broadly defined. And then, through the years, oh boy, there goes the voice. Through the years, the EPA has broadened the definition of a solid waste. So, yeah, it's kind of now any material that is inherently waste-like. And any abandoned material is when it's disposed of, burned, accumulated. So anything inherently waste-like is solid waste. Okay, here's your exceptions. Solid or dissolved material in domestic sewage. So I guess that's our sewers. Irrigation return flows. Any solid or dissolved materials, right? So remember, some of those, they're saying solid or dissolved because otherwise it would be covered by clean water. Any industrial discharges, which are, point sources, right, under the Clean Water Act or the Clean Air Act, that already are subject to permits. And nuclear byproduct material as defined by this Atomic Energy Act. And it's not that, we're not regulating it. It's just, it's regulated by another statute, which is the Atomic Energy Act. Okay, so solid waste, as we saw in the definition, isn't really solid. Okay, it could be liquid, it could even be gas. It's a broad definition. Yeah, and then they call it really anything inherently waste-like. So whatever trash you see, that would be solid waste. Now, so they talk about the difference between solid and hazardous waste, and that comes in, that's in 42 USC 6903 discusses that. So a hazardous waste is a solid waste that, because of what it is, either the amount of it, the concentration, or its properties, may basically hurt your health, Section A, right? Cause or significantly contribute to an increase in mortality or illness, or pose a hazard if it's improperly stored, treated, or transported, right? So if we have petroleum that we're not using anymore, petroleum in my cabinet isn't going to hurt me, but if I'm not storing it and something happens, that can hurt me, right? It's hazardous that way. So really, solid waste is hazardous waste unless, just your standard household garbage. But part of household garbage is hazardous waste these days too, right? We have things like, electronics and cleaning products and things like that. I guess, yeah, your mining sludge, if you put it back in the mining site, that's not defined as hazardous waste. There's a coal exception, drilling waste exception, or extract. So, like, look at the kind of these exceptions are from other energy type sources: cement kiln dust, arsenic treated wood waste, and some chromium waste. Okay, so there's just exceptions to it that you just kind of have to look at. There's kind of two subtitles in RCRA, and there's two different kinds of these solid waste. So then one is under Subtitle D, and one is under Subtitle C. Okay, so here's our non-hazardous solid wastes. So we had those exceptions. And for the non-hazardous solid waste, the states are the ones who are given the role in working on their waste programs. They can make it more stringent if they want, but so it's really state controlled. The EPA sets minimum of these technology standards. Remember, we talked about the technology standards with clean air and clean water. But things like the design of these disposal facilities. So if you are putting it in some sort of non-hazardous waste disposal landfill, there are minimum regs set out by EPA. But again, it's basically state run. And then the state has to issue these permits for the Subtitle D wastes, the non-hazardous ones. And they have to comply with both the EPA regs and the state regs. And I said, again, state regs can be more stringent than the federal ones. So we can't have open dumping of waste. Talks about landfills, how it's designed, maybe what kind of liners you need. And then you'll have to have like financial assurance. So if, God forbid, something happens, you have to have money for corrective action or cleanup. And then the requirement when you close these landfills, right? What happens afterwards? I golf on one of the landfills out there in Kane County, the Settlers Hill. Anybody ever golf out there? Right by the Cougars, right? The Cougar Stadium, or they're the Cougars. It's not called that, right? It's called Northwestern Stadium, but that's all landfill over there.
I was very young on the job with Aurora PD. I had the displeasure of doing a garbage pick there once. And I can tell you it was definitely a punishment.
Yeah. But you're on the golf course, and if the wind blows the wrong way, not so nice.
As glamorous as looks on TV and crime movies. And you don't just find a body part, believe me. There's so much SHIT everywhere. You can't believe how bad it is.
Did you find a body?
You're there.
Did you find the body there then?
No, it wasn't even a body part. It was looking for forensic written evidence
of
what a person planned to do.
Okay. Yeah, because I would imagine with the body parts you'd have cadaver dogs or something like that.
You would think so, but yeah.
Yeah. So if a state for some reason doesn't have their own regs for these non-hazardous solid wastes, then they have to follow the federal plan. But really, so Subtitle D non-hazardous waste are really controlled by the state with some minimum federal requirements. Okay, now the hazardous solid waste under C, there's this cradle to grave program under RCRA. So this waste is managed from the moment it's generated until its final disposal. The EPA can authorize the states to help with this, but or like kind of carry it out. But the requirements come from the feds, come from the EPA and the EPA regs. Okay, so again, we're dealing with the generators, right? The people who create, or I say people, but companies, factories, whoever is creating the waste, transporting the waste, treating the waste, storing the waste, or disposing the waste. And there's permitting, enforcement, and regs for how to correct or clean up in the event of a spill. Okay, so there are a bunch of lists. There's a bunch of lists in the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, on them, and they have letters and numbers on them. Let me see if I can get there now. What is it? 40. That is what I want. I want Title 40. CFR. So yeah, so these lists are assigned with letters, and I really don't know, what they actually stand for, what they actually stand for. Wait, we want 261. 2 in here. See, look at that, solid wastes. Okay, so this part of the Code of Federal Regulations talks about they're identifying these lists. So I'll do it mine. Okay. There's my definition. Where's my lists? There's a lot of definitions here. Maybe I'll go to the EPA site. Sorry, guys. Go to RCRA. Oh, the EPA is hiring. Anybody's interested in that? Okay, we talked about Subtitle D, non-hazardous. Subtitle C, these are these hazardous wastes. And then let me go back to these hazardous wastes. So anyway, they're listed as, and the type of waste is put on a particular list. There's the F list, which is for, it comes from non-specific sources. So, some kinds of waste come from a particular type of process, and that would be under K, specific sources from a particular industry or process. List. Here it is. Identifying and listing hazardous waste. That's what I want. Yeah, I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna lose it. And then, yeah. Let me look at the table of contents. Maybe that's gonna help me better. I can't find it right now. Oh, here's my lists. Lists of hazardous wastes. Okay, so these are the non-specific source ones, and then they have like a list of all of them here, right? So the non-specific course, and so it's 261.31. Okay, so those start with an F. That's why they call it the F list. So not from a specific industry or process. So it's just like a list of a bunch of chemicals, right? Which means nothing to me. and then they'll have the K list, which is from specific sources. And then after that, they have the U and the P, which are deemed hazardous when discarded. So they're the scary ones. So P is the really, really scary one, acutely hazardous, more strictly regulated, and U is toxic. So it's like terrible. Okay. So these are, F and K, maybe not so bad. U and P are really bad. If you're on the U and the P list, you're going to have higher standards because the wastes are more dangerous. Okay. So if I'm a company who creates waste, one of the things I might do if I create a specific type of waste is get this waste off one of these lists, right? Or definitely off the U and the P list, because there's more work. It's more expensive to me to either treat or dispose and transport those kinds of wastes. So that process is called delisting. So I might try to get my waste off of a certain list. So I have to file a petition with the EPA, and if the waste of whatever, after I treat it, doesn't have any hazardous characteristics, which we'll talk about in the next slide, then maybe they're going to delist this little residue waste. And then if it's off the list, then my requirements for the generation, transport, treatment, and storage, will be not as onerous, or maybe even, removed. So what makes our waste hazardous? It's the characteristics of it. Okay, so these are the 4 types of characteristics that they look at for these hazardous wastes. All right, is it ignitable? Right, corrosive, toxic, so toxicity or reactivity. So those are. Did somebody have a question? Is that no? Okay. Somebody probably just got on or off. Okay, so those are things we worry about. So if something is ignitability, does it catch fire? Okay, is it capable of during a handling of either starting a fire or exacerbating a fire once started? Okay, we all know things like that, right? Like oil, grease, right? Have anybody ever had that happen when they're cooking? Your oil goes on fire. Scary, right? Here I have fun videos. Look at me with fun videos. I have to get to 220 on this one. This one, of course, is one of my favorite movies of all time. Zoolander. I'm gonna have an ad first. I know you guys love the ads. Oh, skip ads. I know I go to 220. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, let's try this one here.
Derek Zoolander, a model, idiot.
Oh no! Okay, so that's ignitability. If you think about it later, that we call that ignitability. Let me pause this or close out this screen. Okay, so that's our ignitability. bad hazardous characteristic 1. Okay, next one is corrosivity. So anything that can corrode a container, and then waste can escape, right? So we have something that like you put it in plastic and it corrodes, and then it can leak out. Or, you put it in cardboard, right? Anything liquid will just leach out. So usually things that are at either the high or the low end of the pH scale and can be harmful to the health. So this one's a little graphic, guys, so cover your eyes if you are get squeamish. Oh, come on. And some of you will remember this one too.
That's another thing. Now you got me running around town trying to find some simple piece of plastic that I have a perfectly good tub I can use. Hey.
Anybody remember this from Breaking Bad?
That's Walter White, yeah.
When he tells him to get a plastic thing to put the body in, and he does it in the bathtub instead.
But this one's been early on in the
So that's corrosivity, right? So that Walter White was telling them, because he's the science teacher, that we're going to put whatever this acid in to dispose of the body in a plastic container, and his Jesse isn't very smart, and Jesse says, well, put it in the bathtub, and it corroded through the bathtub and then through the floor, and then you have like disgusting whatever. So that's corrosivity. That's a nice image for you when you think of that. Okay, reactivity, this one's boring, but anything that's kind of unstable. So something that, with friction or handling or management can like explode, right? Can, react. Think of like the volcano with vinegar and the baking soda, or the Mentos and the Diet Coke and the Coke, right? Right, that's reactive. So this one is a little boring, but that's what I couldn't think of any fun ones. Or I guess I could have done like a volcano one.
Glycol. And basically, this is just the stuff that they use for soaps and different things to act as a moisturizing agent. And sometimes it's used in cakes as both a sweetener and something to keep the cake moist to stop it from drying out. I pre-mixed this because it's kind of a pain to actually, mix it in the first place. So basically, I pre-mixed it, 4 grams potassium chloride, 2 grams glycerin, and I put it in the fridge so that way it thickens up a little bit. I know, because I do believe it's glycerin and potassium permanganate has a pretty violent reaction. So I imagine that this is expected to have a violent reaction, but we will see. This was suggested by Bracy Harvey again. So thank you very much for the suggestion. If you guys have your own suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. Try and get out of here as much as I can.
So
Okay.
that's reactive with heat. But we've all seen the thing where you put the Mentos in the Coke containers and it goes, right? So things that would react to either during handling or management. Even stuff that, like, when it when it heats up, right, and then it explodes. That would be an example of reactivity. Toxicity. So that would be, toxic to health, right? If it was likely to lead to hazardous concentration of, if it gets into the groundwater, it would be very, very bad. And this is, let's see which one this one is. Oh, this one. This isn't really what happens. This is old school Batman.
Hey, Carl. Think about the future.
And it's the old story. You fall into a vat of toxic chemicals and you're changed. Yeah. Well, they have it with in the Suicide Squad. They have a new, an updated one of that. And then he comes out. Oh, here he comes. And he's just not the same anymore. Yeah, but they have the new Joker one doing that with the Suicide Squad and what's her face that everybody, Harley Quinn. So anyhow, that's toxicity. So if you have a hazardous waste, right, with one of those four characteristics, if you mix that with like regular solid waste, then the solid waste becomes a hazardous waste, right? Think about it, right? So yeah, if I have something hazardous and I put good clean dirt in it, then the good clean dirt is no longer good clean dirt, right? It becomes hazardous. So this it would be exempted from what we call this mixture rule if once it's mixed with this new solid waste, it doesn't have these same hazardous characteristics. So it's no longer ignitable, corrosive, reactive, or toxic. Or if this mixture is wastewater, then it gets out of RCRA and it's under the Clean Water Act, or it's like itty bitty, right? It has a very, very little bit of this toxic hazardous waste. Sometimes, if you're doing this on purpose, you're like, all right, I have this hazardous waste, I'm treating it, and as part of my treatment, I'm mixing it with something else. Then that is not allowed for an exemption. That's still stays under this hazardous waste requirements. Same thing. Because any waste derived from the treatment, storage, or disposal of a hazardous waste is a hazardous waste, unless it's exempted. And again, it's the same derived from rule. The new product, the byproduct, doesn't exhibit these characteristics that the original one had. Those ignitability, corrosivity, toxicity, and reactivity. Okay, so there's a little flow chart. Big fan of flow charts. First thing we asked to determine if this is a hazardous waste, thus subject to RCRA. Is it a solid waste? Okay, if it's not, then it's not subject to RCRA. Is it excluded? Is it a solid waste, but is it excluded from the definition of solid waste or hazardous waste? Then again, not subject to RCRA. Is it listed as a characteristic hazardous waste? No, it's not subject to RCRA. Yes, we go down. Then we go, has it been delisted? And if you have all of those things, then yes, you're subject to this Subtitle C, that cradle to grave federal requirements, as opposed to that Subtitle D, which is regulated by the states. Same mixture rule, the contained in rule. Yes, it's like putting, if you put bleach in anything, right? If I had cookies and I put bleach in it, then the cookie is now a hazardous waste, right? I can't eat the cookie. And then here's an example of contained in is another thing. Anything contaminated with this hazardous waste is also a hazardous waste. So if I have dirt that has gasoline in it, or I have bleach or cleaning products in my flour, right? That would be a contained in rule. Okay. RCRA likes recycling and reclamation, right? The more you reuse, the less you have to dispose of. That includes things like burning. Sometimes they're doing these things that they're burning the waste to actually create another form, renewable resource, right? So I have my waste, I burn it, and then that's energy. So then I don't have to get more energy. So that's things that fall under recycling and reclamation under RCRA. So after recycling, there's solid waste. If there's spent materials like listed sludges, listed byproducts, and remember those characteristics are those, the bad characteristics that we just went over. Scrap metal, commercial chemical products. So the EPA tries to work on waste management not the, I don't understand what I'm trying to say there. What am I trying to say there?
Not sure.
I don't know what I'm getting there. I think they're saying, they're also, the recycling industry is covered. It can be covered by RCRA as well, depending on, whether you have these characteristics and their, solid waste under RCRA as well. So anybody dealing with waste management of hazardous materials, they have to notify the EPA within 90 days of this waste being identified, once we know it's hazardous. So the waste manager can be owner operator of any sort of treatment or storage or disposal facility. And so the owner is the person who owns it, or the entity that owns it, and the operator is the one who is responsible for the overall operation of the facility. The manager is, the one who generates it, transports it, owns the treatment, storage, and disposal facility. Okay, so this is a hazardous waste manager. Okay, so anybody who is part of this cradle to grave chain. Okay, if you generate it, transport it, or you own, do something about the treatment, storage, or disposal of the waste. Okay, so once this waste is created, you have to give the EPA the name of the waste, where it is cited, and the number that on the list that EPA has created for this waste. And any site that it's going to be located, you have to identify that. And if you don't tell the EPA that you are, either generating, transporting, storing, treating any of this hazardous waste, you're operating, that's an illegal activity. So that's bad. Okay, so here
that's bad.
That's bad. Doing illegal things are bad. So those are waste managing activities. Now we're going to go through the kind of the different jobs of these waste managed activities. First, you have the generator. So the generator is a person or an entity who generates and produces this waste. Okay, they have to, register themselves with the EPA and get their own waste generating ID. Grandmaster waste generator or whatever their ID number is. And that's usually, these.
Did you say grandmaster?
I was trying to give it like a rap name and be cool, but I'm very
Grandmaster Flash. I got you before their time, though.
Right. I'm very, but not before my time, but
bring up the Sugar Hill Gang next.
I remember the Sugar Hill Gang.
The hippie to the hippie, don't stop looking for the bang.
I was trying to give them like an idea, like your rapper name, but though sometimes I'm unsuccessful at being funny. So you get your generator ID from the EPA, and it's usually somebody who operates a factory that whatever this waste is some sort of byproduct of manufacturing. And then you have to. So once this waste is generated, you prepare a manifest. So it's kind of like just a list that has okay, I'm generator ID number 11111. This waste was created on such and such a date. This is the amount. This is my the identifying number of this waste, what's in it, right? These are our the dangerous properties of it. It's reactive and it's ignitable, and things like that. Okay, so and this manifest, right, just like a list, stays with this waste for its entire existence. Okay, so it's like it's like tattooed on it, right? It has to stay with this waste. Okay, so the generators are the ones that start the whole RCRA process. They're the cradle part. So they create the waste, they identify it, they have to somehow before it leaves their facility, they have to prepare it for transportation. So before it leaves, they have to put it in the appropriate vessel for that type of waste, and then have proper packaging and labeling of this waste. Okay, all right, so here's the manifest. Okay, it has your waste number, the EPA waste number, as well as like the word of what it is, your EPA ID of your generator and any transporter it's going to, the EPA number of the TSD, that's what is it? Transport, storage, or disposal facility. That's what TSD stands for. Some certification by whoever started it that the waste has been appropriately packaged and labeled, and then like every person who touches it has to do that certification again, or every entity. So it's like, okay, I'm in factory A, it's going to truck. So then the truck is transporter. He has to fill out his part of the manifest, my EPA ID and dates and whatever it was. They have to have a certification that they have a proper program in place, that it was appropriately packaged and labeled, and that is again on the manufacturer. And that's like, it's not even just like a label; it's in handwritten or like it's in signed. So is an individual who is responsible for that. Okay, and then so each handler, so you have your manifest and there's a bunch of different pages, so everybody gets a copy of it. Okay, so when it starts out transportation person A, then at the end it's all going to go back to the first generator, so they know what the grave was for this waste that they created. Is this what the manifest looks like? Hopefully this will work. Look at that. Okay, so this is like what it looks like, right? So you just have your generator ID, the manifest has a tracking number, the generator's mailing address. Then there's your transporter. If there's a second transporter, that's your TSD facility and address, and kind of like what's in there. Okay, what's the name of it, their hazard class, what kinds of containers, any waste codes, and the generator, signs it. And then like each, as it goes further, each transporter, it gives their information, and then when it reaches its final destination, a copy of this goes back to the generator. So then the generator knows, okay, we're done. This waste is in its happy final resting place. If the generator does not get this manifest back within 45 days of when they got this waste off their facility, they have to issue what is called an exception report and get that to the EPA. They have to figure out who messed up and didn't get it back. So the generator creates the manifest. It is responsible for the end of the manifest, and it's also responsible for properly preparing this waste before it's transported off site. So they have we've all seen these things. So each waste has what their poison or flammable, combustible, all those standard kinds of things with proper packaging, label, and labeling for it. This all has to be managed, but illegal dumping still occurs. These illegal dumpers, they don't have EPA numbers, so they're if waste is created and dumped without this manifest being created, the EPA doesn't know about it and would have to go find it. But it is becoming more and more difficult to dump illegally because people are more and more aware of it. Let's get to this one now. Everybody wants me to sign up for RBO now.
What do they do with these things after we seal them?
I hear they dump them in an abandoned chalk mine and cover them with cement.
I hear they're sending them to one of those southern states where the governor's a crook.
Either way, I'm sleeping good tonight.
Well, sir, where should we dump this batch? The playground?
No, all those bold children are arousing suspicion. To the park.
I think it's full, sir.
That's ridiculous. The last tree held 9 drums. Agent Malone, Environmental Protection Agency. Some Boy Scouts stumbled on your little game of hide the ooze.
So even Mr. What's his name? he's
Burns.
Yeah, Mr. Burns is caught. It's harder and harder for this illegal dumping. People are more eager to report it if they see it. Another requirement for generators, so the generators have to, create the manifest, they have to create the labels, they have to be responsible for the manifest when it comes back and give that back to the EPA. But they're also responsible for efforts to minimize the creation of the waste in the first place. So they have to file reports with the EPA that talk about what they're doing to minimize waste. And even if they, some countries use this, export your waste to us as, a way to generate income. But even if you're doing that, you still have to satisfy RCRA, right? You still have to have your manifest, and you still have to have your all your reports and your proper packaging. And if you import hazardous waste for some reason, you're like, oh, My job is to import hazardous waste from Canada or something like that. Then you are considered a generator under RCRA by the EPA in the United States. It's tough business. Then we have small quantity generators. SQGS. Sorry, these acronyms kill me. So those are ones that they don't produce a lot of waste. So because it would be more efficient to ship, transport them at the same time, they can store some small quantities of waste without permit until then they transport it, but they still have to follow those manifest systems. All right, it's our first hour, so let's take like a 10-minute break and come back, unless anybody has any questions for me right now.
Good to me.
Okay. All right. I'll see you guys at 7:40.
All right, thank you.